This is Lecture 5C for History 111. So I'm talking about the Persian empires. And one of the key factors, one of the key things that comes out of this is a new religion called Zoroastrianism. And Zoroastrianism is the first of these new religions I'm going to talk about that emerged somewhere around 500 BCE. And I'll talk in the discussion section for this lecture about some of these classical religions and what it all means, but I just want to note that Zoroastrianism is one of these first religions that emerges somewhere around 500 BCE. Now, Zoroastrianism is founded by a man named Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, who was probably an aristocrat and probably was trained as a priest in some of these older transactional religions that I've talked about previously, where priests did all sorts of sacrifices and rituals and things. And apparently he got tired of that, and he decided that was not the best way to practice religion. And he set about creating a new religion, and he fundamentally changed what religion does or what it meant, right? So he looked at all these different gods and everything that were going on, and he decided that when you get down to it, there's actually a fundamental duality in the universe. There's good and evil, there's light and darkness. And he said that there are two main gods that represent these forces. There's Ahura Mazda, who is the god of light, and incidentally that's where Mazda cars get their name. And there's Angramanyu, who is the god of darkness and evil. And these two forces, good and evil, are fighting over the material world. And they're going to have a 12,000-year conflict. And human beings are part of that conflict. And then at the end of the 12,000-year conflict, Ahura Mazda is going to win. Good and light is going to win. But then every person will be judged based on their part in that conflict. Did they fight for good or did they fight for evil? And in particular, what this means is that your whole life is going to be examined by Ahura Mazda. And all of the decisions and all of that you make will be judged on, did you do good or did you do evil in life? And the Zoroastrians sort of sum this up with the phrase, good thoughts, good words, good thoughts, good deeds. Did you do good, right? And so your life is going to be judged on that. And then, based on that judgment, you will either go to heaven, which is a place of paradise and delight for all eternity, or you will be cast into hell, which is a place of suffering, right? Now, this is important because this is an interesting shift. It's a very much a shift that's similar to what happened in Judaism right about this time, right? I forgot to mention, Zoroaster, he probably preached in the 600s BCE or maybe the 500s BCE. Some historians think there might be evidence that he lived as early as 1100 BCE, but his religion really takes off about 500 BCE. So we're really not sure how it spread, et cetera. And part of the problem with dating it is that the early Zoroastrians didn't write down what they were talking about. It was all passed on orally in an oral tradition, and so there's no record of it. We don't know how far back it goes. But we do know that beginning about 500 CE, Zoroastrianism becomes a major religion. Now, and remember, the Babylonian captivity for Judaism happened in the 500 CE. And what happened in Judaism was this shift from thinking, we're just one of many gods and we make our offerings to the gods, to saying, no, our God is the only God, and our God is like a father to us, and he expects us to behave well, right? So Judaism, we've seen, had this requirement that people behave well. Each individual had a moral responsibility to act the way God wanted them to and to obey the Ten Commandments, etc. Zoroastrianism sees a similar shift because each person is going to be judged at a final judgment, and they are going to be cast into hell or elevated to heaven. And so each person's personal life, how they act in life, whether they cheat people, whether they're mean to people or nice to people, that will be judged. So this is, again, a religion that's moving towards an idea of personal morality. This religion is about how you act as an individual. It's not about getting the gods to end a plague or something like that. It's about how you act as an individual, right? And this innovation of the final judgment, now we saw that already a little bit with the Egyptian idea of the field of reeds and such as that, but this idea that that fundamentally each individual must choose in a conflict, and a sort of a godly universal conflict between good and evil. One has to take a side, and then one can go to hell or heaven for eternity. That's a new twist on this old Egyptian idea. And this formulation of a final judgment and a heaven and a hell would have a profound influence on lots of religions. In particular, it would then influence Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But it would also influence some other religions that I'm going to talk about later. So Zoroastrianism was actually a profoundly influential religion in these basic ideas that it comes up with. It had periods of being a profoundly important religion in secular terms, meaning in terms of actual civilization. The Achaemenids adopted Zoroastrianism as their religion and used it to justify. They said Ahura Mazda had chosen, Cyrus or Darius or Xerxes as emperor. And they used it to sort of justify their rule. Now, the Seleucids did not. They sort of didn't care about Zoroastrianism and threw it out. But people kept practicing Zoroastrianism. And the Parthians sort of adopted it, and then the Sassanids adopted it again, and it became a really important religion under the Sassanids. So Zoroastrianism sort of had an up and down career here. It would eventually be sort of wiped out in Persia by the advent of Islam. But it actually survives till today. In parts of India, there are small sects of people called Parsis, which is the Indian version for Persians, who practice Zoroastrianism still. So it's still around today, although it's a pretty minor religion. But it was a major influence, both secularly because these different empires adopted it, and in terms of influence on other religions, because it put forth these ideas that would become key parts of other religions also. So that is Zoroastrianism.